So AI is the new electricity, much as the rise of electricity about 100 years ago transformed every major industry. I think that AI has now reached a level of maturity today that gives it a straight shot to also transform every industry. It's going to do a whiteboard presentation today, so they told me to stand here and talk for a minute while they were getting set up. So what I hope to do today is share with you what I'm seeing in AI, as well as talk about how companies, hopefully many of your enterprises, can adopt AI. There's been a lot of hype about AI, and we saw some of the AI is summoning the demon quotes just now at the opening comments. There's been tremendous progress in AI, and in the field we often break AI down into AGI, where G stands for general, artificial general intelligence, and this was the concept of human-level AI, sentient AI, AI that maybe someday can do almost everything that you and I can. And I'm personally seeing almost no progress, very low progress, if any, toward AGI. Where almost all the progress is, and what's driving tremendous economic value, is ANI, or artificial narrow intelligence. And this is allowing us to nearly make self-driving cars a reality, do automatic healthcare, move towards increasingly personalized educational experiences, and this is driving tremendous economic value. I think from a communications point of view, unfortunately, both of these are called AI, and so the excitement and the rapid progress we're seeing about ANI is unfortunately causing simplified analyses to think there's also progress, rapid progress, maybe fearful progress in AGI, which I don't think is true. So I don't worry about AGI for the same reason that I don't worry about overpopulation on the planet Mars. Maybe in hundreds of years, I hope we'll have the technology to populate and maybe someday overpopulate Mars, but I think we're still quite far away from that. So most of the progress in AGI over the last several years has been driven by one type of technology specifically, which is called supervised learning. And that means learning input to output, or A to B mappings. We've had this for a long time. For example, you can input a piece of email and output is this spam or not? And thanks to the rise of neural networks and deep learning, this is working better than ever before. Or Young mentioned self-driving cars. Their key component is an AI that takes as input an image and radar and LiDAR and so on readings of what's in front of your car and outputs the position of other cars. And we're starting to have AI systems that can input an X-ray image and render a diagnosis. And speech recognition works really well. I've been tracking the progress of Bixby and other speech assistants, and that relies on AI that inputs an audio clip and outputs a text transcript. And the most lucrative application of this, maybe not the most inspiring, is AI that inputs an ad and information about you maybe, and tells us if you will click on this ad. And so supervised learning, whose rise is to a large extent powered by the recent innovations in machine learning and deep learning, is on a path to transform every major industry. One rule of thumb I found useful is what's sometimes called the 1 second rule. Not the 3 second rule when you drop food on the floor, but the 1 second rule, which is almost anything that you can do with a second of human thought, we could almost always, we could probably now or soon automate using AI, using machine learning, using deep learning. I found this a useful rule of thumb to give to product managers. I've had companies with product managers running around trying to find tasks that they can do with less than a second of thought as a candidate for automation. Now, deep learning and supervised learning is allowing us to execute automation on steroids. Right? And I think the true value of AI in the near term is not sentient robots, it's automation on steroids. And today, there's a lot of great AI work happening in multiple large companies, including companies like Samsung, Google, Baidu, Facebook, Microsoft, and many others. But so far, we're just getting started. And I think there is going to be room for at least one winner and maybe multiple winners in every industry. So rather than AI being just the purview of tech companies, I think that the next revolution, the next step for AI is for it to become pervasive in many other industries as well. You know, take a non-tech industry, say chicken farming. Right? I think that today there are large chicken farming companies, such as Tyson Chicken, for example, and I've not spoken with them, I don't have a relationship with them, but my guess is that a company like that would have a lot more data on chicken farming than even the large tech industries, than even the large tech companies do. And by using AI to process this data and make good decisions, this allows a company like that to become even better at chicken farming or any other industry that some of you may be engaged in, and create more value and build additional moats for their business. So I think that AI, theme of this meeting, AI adoption will be good for business as well as good for the world. And with AI, there will be many valuable applications that are still yet to be built. You know, a lot of the most valuable applications of AI today are sometimes not the most inspiring ones, at least not to me personally. I think online advertising, you know, very lucrative application, but I think there are a lot of other applications of AI. So let me just mention a few examples of AI that I see and find exciting. And I think for myself, I'm engaged as CEO of Landing AI and also engaged with an ecosystem of companies. So I'm privileged to see many applications of AI and want to share a few with you. Take manufacturing. It's quite far from Silicon Valley style tech industries. One of the things that my teams are doing is to apply AI to visual inspection. If you look at many manufacturing processes in consumer electronics, auto components, inspection is the last line of defense against defects, against shipping you a device with scratch or a dent or something wrong inside or outside. And today, there are factories with hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people, that are standing over manufacturing lines using the human eye to check these consumer electronic devices for dents and scratches and other types of defects. So using supervised learning, where the input A is an image, and the output is either 0 or 1, does this object have a defect or not? We find that we're almost always or frequently able to automate defect inspection and carry this work out at a level of reliability that is better than typical humans and at lower cost. And I think this allows people to be freed up to hopefully do higher level, more strategic work. Healthcare. Young mentioned the rising cost of healthcare. Today in the United States, 18% of our GDP is spent on healthcare. And I think as one segment of healthcare, I think mental health care is in crisis. So in the US, we spend, I think, about $130 billion on heart disease. We spend $200 billion on mental health care. And this is even not counting the cost of the human anguish of mental health problems. So one of my friends is working on Wobot, which is a digital mental health care chatbot. You know, if anyone has a panic attack at 2 a.m., most people are reluctant to call for help. So many therapists give their cell phone numbers or give their phone numbers to their patients, but at 2 a.m. when someone's having a panic attack or someone is considering self-harm, few people want to call up a therapist and bother them in the middle of the night. And I think at universities, including top universities, and many top universities, over 25% of students report mental health care issues that are so debilitating that they have trouble functioning. So I think today, in today's world, the supply and demand for mental health care are greatly mismatched. But with Wobot, which is a chatbot, you can now pull up a cell phone, and anytime you want him, this is a male-gendered mental health care chatbot, anytime you want to chat with Wobot, you can pull the phone and say, I'm feeling this, and have someone to talk to you 24/7. And this is able to deliver conversations at a far lower cost than would be true for seeing a human therapist for $200 a session or whatever the local prices are. Agriculture. You know, I think that today, I've actually visited a lot of farms, and farms today have to make many challenging decisions. What plants do you plant? How do you, when do you farm? When do you harvest? When do you apply pesticide? And if so, what pesticide do you apply? And I think that with data, farms will be much more efficient in the future. There's a global trend we're seeing around the world as well. That's already happened in the US, but it's happening in developing economies as well, which is consolidation of small farms. There are many family-run farms, small family-run farms in many developing economies around the world, including China and India and elsewhere, that are slowly being consolidated into larger farms. And I think the consolidation of small farms into large farms will drive tremendous opportunities for efficiency. In which larger agricultural machines will be able to optimize production as well as make income hopefully more predictable for farmers. So I think we read a lot about the amazing work that the tech companies are doing in AI, and I think a lot of the best and most important work to be done in AI yet in this next phase of building up the fourth industrial revolution is taking AI not just to the great shiny tech companies in Silicon Valley that we all love, but also take it to industries like manufacturing or healthcare or agriculture or these other industries where the transformation value, the value creation is, I think, very large. Now, I know many of you come from the tech world, but I spend a lot of my time thinking about how enterprises can transform using AI. So how do you take a company that is not, how do you take a great company and turn it into a great AI company? I think that every industry will need true AI companies, but what does it mean to be a true AI company? With the rise of the internet, one of the lessons we learned was that if you want to be an internet company, it doesn't mean build a website. There are tons of companies with websites, but the fact of having a website and even selling things on a website does not turn you into an internet company. And I think so too it is with AI. If you have a few engineers, they're implementing a few neural networks, that doesn't make a company a great AI company. So at Landing AI, I've been privileged to travel to many countries and speak with many CEOs. And one question I get asked often is, CEOs will say, Andrew, what is it? What do I need to think about to build a good AI company? I want to share with you some things I would urge companies to think about. I think for something to be a good AI company, it requires a good, sound, company-wide AI strategy. And so this is very industry and situation specific. For example, the large web search engines have numerous free products that may or may not monetize directly, but allows them to collect data that is monetized elsewhere. So that's one one example of a broader AI strategy for some of the large web search engine companies where I've been privileged to lead AI teams. But I think other industries as well will have to develop unique points of view on where to play and how to develop a defensible moat. Great AI companies should have in-house AI resources and the AI talent to build sequences of AI projects. You know, if you look at a company like Google or Baidu or Samsung, what is it that makes these good AI companies? It's not that Google does online advertising, so that makes it a good AI company. It's that it has the capability to execute on a sequence of high-value projects, which is also coincidentally broadly aligned with a company's strategy. So good teams have that. I urge CEOs to think about technical infrastructure. And this often means infrastructure to collect the data, centralize the data resources, and make that data, be it IoT databases, unified data warehouses, that infrastructure available so that teams can build on top of that. And one concrete example that some of you could go home and implement right away is good AI companies tend to have more centralized data warehouses. If you have 50 siloed data warehouses under the control of 50 different VPs, it's almost impossible for an engineer to get access to the data, to feed it to an algorithm to connect the dots. And so AI companies, many of the leading ones, have just made preemptive investments in centralizing data warehouses. AI workflows and processes. You know, in the software engineering world, we once had to invent Scrum and Agile development and the concept of code review. These were examples of new processes, and we had to come up with this job title called a product manager, right? So these were examples of the workflows and processes that we invented for the rise of the software era or maybe the internet era. And I think that the leading AI teams are very thoughtful about how we define our job descriptions. For example, there's a new role called a machine learning engineer. And some of my teams have what we think of as AI product managers, whose job description is different than a traditional product manager. But to set up teams' job descriptions as well as workflows and processes. So what is the AI version of Scrum and Agile? A lot of my teams use very strange processes that I don't see outside leading AI companies because it's these new workflows that we need. For example, a lot of my teams run sprints that are more like one-day sprints rather than two-week sprints, right? Because that fits better with the workflow of AI development. And then I think finally, leading AI companies often have a thoughtful approach to regulations and to public-private partnerships. You know, a lot of regulations in many countries, including the United States, were developed in the pre-AI era. For example, self-driving cars. Most of the rules of the road were written for a 100% human-driven car road. But for self-driving cars to be a reality, I think we will need public-private partnerships that allow us to work together with government to protect consumers, but also enable these amazing self-driving cars to come to fruition. You know, Young mentioned, when are self-driving cars going to be ready? I'm tempted to say, I think self-driving cars, I think the date self-driving cars are ready was July 2018, when Drive.ai launched deployment service in Frisco, Texas. I think the practical deployment of self-driving cars is not going to be an overnight thing. It will be a gradual thing as self-driving cars operate in more and more territories. But through public-private partnerships, Drive.ai, I'm on the board of Drive.ai, is already deploying a useful service. And people take the self-driving car to lunch. And I think, to me, the meaning of self-driving car is not the self-driving car, is that people are taking this to grab lunch in the middle of the workday. That's what actually excites me. But a large part of why Drive.ai deployed in Texas, even though it's a California-based company, is that even though the company is very committed to our home state of California, Texas has regulatory certainty that enables the company to operate and deploy these vehicles as of a few. So actually, you guys can go there, find an employee in this hall park and get into one of these self-driving cars and take a ride, and you don't need to ask me for permission, right? So this is becoming reality in a small part of the world, and hopefully will scale. So some of those are the things that CEOs should think about in terms of building AI enterprises. So how do you actually get there, right? What's a roadmap, or what's a playbook? So this is the other question I'm asked by a lot of CEOs, which is, hey, Andrew, how do I help my great company become a great AI company? I want to share with you maybe a 5-step roadmap or a 5-step playbook. Step 1, start with a small number of projects. Start with a small number of AI projects. And if you're executing corporate change, the purpose of the first couple of projects is partly for their value, but even more so to help you start the flywheel so you can gain momentum. When I was leading the Google Brain, many years ago, I started and led the Google Brain project, which I think was arguably the leading force for helping Google turn from what was already a great company into today a great AI company. And then a few years ago, I led AI technology and strategy and execution at Baidu, and kind of also helped Baidu turn into what I think is arguably the greatest AI company in China. But reflecting back, when I was leading Google Brain, there was a lot of skepticism about deep learning. Right? Deep learning was not a cool thing to work on back then. My first internal customer was the Google speech team. And speech recognition at Google, especially back then, it was nice, it was kind of important, but actually not the most important project. Web search and advertising were more important back then. But by having my first internal customer and partnering with the speech team to make them more successful, it helped convince other teams that deep learning is valuable, and that helped get my second internal customer, which was the Google Maps team. And by making them more successful, I then started to talk to the ads team, and that started I think the snowball at Google, the Google Brain team, doing more and more projects, and then eventually transforming a large part of the company. So the first one or two projects is really to gain momentum, and in addition to having the value. Second is, I think, to leverage AI talent, and this is both outsourced as well as in-house. If you work with an outside partner, that will often help you build momentum faster. But eventually, there are going to be AI projects in most companies. A lot of the data science projects require deep domain knowledge that can be and will be more efficiently done by an in-house team. So I think building an AI team is maybe the second key step. And then I think education is the third key step. Actually, Daphne, my co-founder of Coursera, spent a lot of time working on education, and the tools now exist for companies to educate people at scale and at lower cost than ever before. Today, Coursera has over 500 companies and governments using it to educate their own talent. And I think for a company to be great at AI, you need to train up AI engineers, but also you need to train up various levels of management and executives to have a deep enough understanding of AI to partner with an AI team that you build in this step in order to drive consistent execution of so this would be education of both executives and managers as well as of engineers. And then AI strategy, which is situation and industry specific. But at Landing AI, we've been working to partner with many companies on all of these. And then finally, internal and external communications. You know, I think today, AI companies are just valued very highly, and I think the ability to clearly communicate your value creation thesis is valuable, as well as letting your customers know how you're using AI, as well as also reassuring your employees if necessary. I think there is a little bit of unnecessary, fear, uncertainty, and doubt with hyped evil killer robots, and I think having internal stakeholder communications as well as external stakeholder communications can help align the whole organization around AI. So I feel many leading AI organizations have done several steps of these, and at Landing AI, many CEOs ask me things like, "Hey Andrew, how do I turn my company into a great AI company?" And we wound up partnering or supporting our colleagues on these types of transformations to help great companies become great AI companies. Just to wrap up, AI is a very disruptive technology. It's working much better now than 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm very inspired that today we actually see high school students executing on projects that the best researchers in the world could not have done 3 years ago, right? And so that's the pace of technological change. But with every major technological disruption, it gives us an opportunity to remake large parts of the world. And so I hope that I'm excited to have Samsung as a friend and partner, and hopefully that all of us together can take advantage of this change to remake large parts of the world to make them better. Thank you all very much.